So one of the things that I think has helped us and supported us is in each of our planning documentations, we have our data tables embedded in those, and it is an expectation of our staff to have those filled in prior to coming to planning after they've identified what data we're going to look at, and that data must be relevant data to what we're about to teach in that 2 week cycle.
It's a little bit symbolic, but we ensure that that data table is at the top of the planner, and everything that comes underneath it is the work that's catering for those names at the top. But it becomes that collective responsibility for every single staff member in that team, as well as any other support staff or learning specialists, that they're working to cater for the needs of every single student in the cohort and not just their class. The curriculum mapping document, continually, links directly to the curriculum. So people go back to the curriculum rather than just thinking it's a Pinewood document that we've got here. What we didn't want and what we found previously was over the time creating more and more planners and things at the school, you start to get a Pinewood standard or a Pinewood expectation of a curriculum and a continua. What we wanted to do is make sure that those links remained with the Victorian curriculum, and we were, assessing, and we were putting out content, I suppose, or teaching content to the students and exposing them to the content that was relevant right across the state.
There was a bit of hesitation, obviously, with anything new that comes about with the 2.0 curriculum. Last year was a bit of an experimentation, like let's, trial, fail fast, provide each other with feedback, work it all out. And I think from there, the staff this year going into using the 2.0 are very comfortable and confident with what they are doing, how they're planning towards it.
Designing something that assisted teachers to continuously track student achievement was the best way to do that. We felt that gave us the opportunity to then have teacher judgment conversations from earlier in the semester. I think quite often, we were relying on data that was coming at report writing time. So at the end of semester 1 and then semester 2, and the horse had kind of bolted. There was no point that we could sort of address, something prior to those reports going out and that data being formulated and published. So what we wanted to do is create something that tracked, student achievement and student growth, and have those conversations. And by putting together the tracker that looks at the achievement standards and weights them based on the number of achievement standards at each level right across the strands, and then brings together an overall mark. It gave us the opportunity, even sort of, 8 weeks into term 1 or thereabouts, to have those conversations. Okay, what sort of trends were we seeing? What were our next steps, both in our teaching program, but the student learning, so that we could really make sure that we were catering for the needs of the students and sort of do that deep dive and that hard hit to ensure that we were giving that growth. And we felt that, we wanted to value add. We just didn't want to see 6 months growth in 6 months as expected. What we wanted to do was make sure the things that we were doing across the school were really value adding for each of our students.
We needed to come up with a way that it would be consistent across our staff in the school, and it wasn't particular staff members just having a guess of or interpreting it in a different way. So we wanted something that was consistent, something that was supporting and that supported our staff, like Andrew mentioned, and that's something that wasn't just usable for reporting, but also we can use this throughout our planning meetings as well, looking at trends. If we have a big gaps across the school in decimals, like that can be identified through the tracker, and then we can deep dive into that and better support our staff in teaching those areas of the curriculum. Yeah, so with the idea of the tracker, when we get the staff to input their data, we kind of ask them to make sure that data they're inputting into the tracker is their triangulated data. So we get them to base it off, teacher observation, assessments done in the classroom. We use an essential assessment, but we don't want them to be too heavily relied upon on essential assessment as well. And we use PAT maths. And
each of those progression points or ticks against the achievement standard becomes an example of triangulation of data.
Mm.
So we've got the strand pages, but on the tracker, then we've got an overall page as well that sort of amalgamates all of the progression points and puts out one, or suggested progression points, and then puts out one suggested aggregate progression point. But what we also do is we bring that pad
Mm.
adaptive score right next to the suggested progression point so that they can triangulate right there. And I think again, it might be sort of something that was just discrete for us, but we wanted to make sure that it was just a suggested progression point that
Mm.
the tracker was putting out. We don't ever want to take away, the professionalism of each of our teachers, and it's ultimately a representation of their judgment. And we hope that they understand that each time they say yes, that they've seen something achieved, that's still a representation of their judgment because it is a whole triangulation of data. But yeah, just using that language around this is what the tracker is suggesting based on what the information they've put in. Ultimately, it still comes back to them to put in that teacher judgment data at that final progression point. If they're not comfortable with it, obviously we can have conversations around it and say, okay, well, you're sort of suggesting this, and we can go back to the planners and have a look at the data table and where they've sort of been pitching their lessons and the content to ensure that that students are getting their next step in learning and moving towards those achievement standards. But it's always sort of not taking away at any point the professionalism that we want and that we know that each of our teachers has.
Mm.
I think our learning and going a little bit earlier than the rest in the network that we had gave us the opportunity to really probably strengthen those numeracy connections and those connections across a range of schools, and probably more than we were originally working
Mm.
with in 2025. So I think we've connected with several schools, right across the region now, just sort of sharing our journey and our learning. And I think it's been a great opportunity for us, but hopefully it's been a great opportunity for them as well. And what we do is sort of understand that we've gone through a journey that was specific to Pinewood. Obviously, the greater picture is, Maths 2.0 curriculum and really sort of delving deep and understanding that. But what we've done is sort of, just understood that this has been our journey, and that, hopefully, we can assist and help where we can, other schools who are now on that journey as well.